Here I have a Toyota Tacoma 2012. The problem I'm having right now is with the hitch. The hitch is actually peeling a lot. You can kind of see how the paint is peeling. My objective is to take the existing rust off this hitch and then repaint it. So one of the first things you need to do is to try and peel off all the paint. That's what I'm going to do. The excess paint that's all over here. The one thing I don't like about these hitches, this vehicle is only like 8 years old, but the paint on the hitch is already peeling, which is not a good sign. You know, I've had this problem with almost every car I've owned, every time I've had a hitch. I want to show you how badly it's actually rusted behind here. See that? See all the rust all the way on the back side? I'm going to have to peel away as much as this as possible from the back side. Let me show you a few different ways you can take the remaining rust off that off the hitch. So I have a wire and wheel brush set. This is actually steel brushes. I attach it to a drill, and then I'll show you how I do this. The only problem with using this wire brush is that there's certain areas I couldn't access, like over here. I can do it with the sandblasting, but I can't access it with the wire wheel. You can kind of see the finish getting the rust off, but with a sandblaster, and you can see what it looks like before, kind of see the difference. But this is what most people would actually have. To use sandblasting, you need an air compressor and appropriate equipment. Here I'm underneath the car. I'm actually masking it. This is the hitch that you see right here. So I'm making sure that everything behind the hitch is masked with a piece of cloth. I've actually used duct tape to seal the areas so no sand, when I sandblast, will get behind this area. I'm going to try and push this up so it doesn't come down. I'm trying to push this into the wheel well, but I might have to do something to hold it in place. It keeps coming down. The other areas I'm going to have to mask is this area right here. This whole area needs to be masked going further on up. This right here is where I connect the hitch wiring. So there's a piece of wire that's coming down into it. You can see that piece of wire. I'm going to wrap this piece of cloth around it and tape it so the wiring doesn't get damaged. Sandblasting is pretty abrasive. It'll destroy insulation on wires. It'll destroy pretty much anything if you don't protect it. And so I have to protect this wire with cloth. Hopefully the cloth doesn't wear too much as I sandblast. If it does, then I'm going to have to wrap it more with something else. You can kind of see all the sand that came out from the sandblasting. You can kind of see I took a lot of the rust, but there's still some rust on it. I haven't finished doing all these areas. I still have to do the backside, but one of the things we have to check is I have sand. Make sure you have enough sand to do the sandblasting. You need to use a screwdriver to peel off all these paint chips that are actually sticking on, but you need to take them off as much as possible, or when you put the paint on it, it's going to peel off eventually. You can see the rust underneath the paint. This is the paint kind of bubbled up. and there's rust underneath it. I'm actually underneath the car, and you can kind of see the areas that have rusted out. There are some areas that still have paint on it, like this area here. I can't seem to get the paint off, so I'm going to work around it. You can kind of see the areas I kind of get the paint and rust off. There's still a little bit of rust here, but I think when I clean it up, you'll see it a lot better. A lot of the top surface, I'm putting my hands over it, still has paint on it. I lost some paint here, and there's rust here, which I will sand manually. I'm gonna use a 50 grit sandpaper to run over these areas to try to get more rust out, because I can't reach it with the drill. Right after I'm done sanding and getting all the rust off, I use this Prep All solution. It's made by Clean Strip to actually remove wax and grease, and I actually went over the hitch that you see here, and you can see the rags that are dirty with all the rust. You want to wipe it down thoroughly so all the everything that's on any rust remnants on the hitch are actually taken off. So here's what it looks like from underneath. After I cleaned it, I can actually smell the odor of all these chemicals, but you can kind of see what it looks like. I'm gonna run clean rags over this. I'm only planning to add primer to areas that need the primer, not the areas which have paint on it. Like, I'm not gonna add too much primer to these areas. There's still some paint on it. You have to continue cleaning till your rags come out slightly rusty, but not too rusty, so you know the area is clean. So finally, when you look at it, it should look like this almost. You can kind of tell most of the rust is off. But make sure that you start priming soon after you let this dry, maybe within half an hour of it drying. Because if you don't, it's going to rust again and you'll have to do it all over again. This is the back or underneath the hitch. I have to wait about 6 hours before putting the second coat, so hopefully the second coat will be sufficient, and after that I can start painting the areas which do need the paint. And I did the same thing on the front side too. You'll see a lot of pitting here. It's not something you can fix. It's just the way things rust. As you look here, you're going to see pitting, other types of defects, but it's not something you can really fix. So I'm putting the second coat on. When you put the second coat, you're looking for areas which didn't get the paint during the first coat, so you try to apply paint in those areas first. Before you do the other areas, and that's what I'm trying to do here. Make sure you don't get any paint inside here, because you won't be able to put the hitch itself into this receiver, because then you won't be able to fit the hitch. Note that I have actually add masking tape to the electrical components here, so I don't get paint on it. Note that I'm not painting everything on here, just the areas that I think need paint. So it's not like a complete paint job. It's just to cover the areas that are rusting, so I don't have any unexpected issues with the hitch falling off or breaking on me as I'm pulling a trailer. Because you never know when that might happen, because rust does strange things to hitches, you know. Usually it ends up with a crack, and the crack propagates, and then you have a break when you're pulling a trailer. Usually happens when you're pulling a trailer. I don't want that happening. So now some people may say, well, why don't you just get a new hitch? Yeah, sure, I could get a new hitch, but get a new hitch be probably $300 plus install. So I don't want to spend the money for a new hitch because this is going to work. I just need to protect it from rust. So let me show you what I do to clean my paint brushes which have oil paint on it. You need to use paint thinner. Paint thinner can right here. I pour a little bit of that into oil can. I actually cut this up to do paint thinner cleaning in. So I put the solution in there. You can see the solution moving around. So I'm going to dip this brush in there, and you can see the paint comes off. One thing you don't want to do with this paint thinner is to dump it down the drain or pour it onto the ground. You let it evaporate. If that's the only way to get rid of this paint thinner is to let it evaporate. You can even reuse this. I've reused this many times, and I'm going to use a rag to wipe it off. It can be a clean rag. It can be, I've used this rag before, so I'm just going to use this rag to wipe off the paint. You want to make sure you get all the paint off the brush, because if there's any paint on the brush, you won't be able to use it again. It'll just get stiff. These paint thinner is flammable, so these rags, they're actually sitting there to dry. And when it's garbage day, what I do is to take these rags and throw them directly in the trash. So it goes out with the garbage. You don't want to put this in the garbage beforehand, because anything with paint thinner is flammable. You don't want to set your trash can on fire. And I have usually a fan running when I have these rags sitting.